This is Phoenix, the largest city in the state of Arizona and the fifth largest in the US, with a population of approximately 1.6 million people. Phoenix is one of the strangest major cities in the US for many reasons, but one thing stands out: the city's lack of skyscrapers. In fact, Phoenix doesn't have a single building exceeding 490 feet, approximately 150 meters, which is the minimum height typically used to define a true skyscraper. The tallest building in the city is Chase Tower, standing at 483 feet or 147 meters, and it has held that title since 1972. So, why does Phoenix choose not to build skyscrapers like almost all other major American cities? Phoenix wasn't always a big city. If we go back about 80 years to 1950, it had a population of just over 100,000 after a slow but steady growth from the year it was founded in 1868. But this would quickly change. Over the next few decades, the city's population exploded, averaging a 4% annual growth rate over almost the entire latter half of the century. This was mainly due to the invention of the air conditioning, which made the extreme desert heat more tolerable, also the post-war population boom, and the rise of the automobile. Suddenly, a city in the middle of the desert became one of the most desirable places to live in the entire country. Because Phoenix was surrounded by basically nothing else other than flat land in every direction, developers didn't have to compete for small, expensive parcels downtown, but could instead just buy up cheap land on the edge of the metro and turn it into new suburbs. By the 1980s, Phoenix had become a model for car-centric sprawl. The entire city was practically built for cars, consisting of mainly sparsely populated neighborhoods made out of single-family homes, strip malls, and acres of parking space. And because much of Phoenix's economy was centered on real estate, construction, and service industries, which do not require dense concentrations of office spaces and tall buildings, there was never a strong economic or logistical reason to build up, unlike older American cities that were built before the rise of the automobile. So Phoenix just kept spreading. The result? Well, Phoenix is the fifth biggest city in the US and still one of the fastest growing large cities in the country. In fact, Phoenix is over 500 square miles in size. That's larger than Los Angeles, New York, and nearly 5 times the size of Detroit. And yet, its skyline is nowhere near as impressive as many other US cities. As I mentioned earlier, the city doesn't have a single building above 492 feet. Or 150 meters, which is the typical minimum height a building has to be in order to be classified as a real skyscraper. Compare this to New York alone, it has more than 300, while Chicago has around 140 and Miami 67. Phoenix is actually the only one of the top 10 biggest cities in the US that doesn't have at least one skyscraper. But Phoenix's history and decision to grow wide instead of tall is just one part of the story. Because even if Phoenix wanted to build skyscrapers, there are a few major things standing in its way. The main reason actually has to do with the city's airport. You see, Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport was originally established back in 1928, way before Phoenix population boomed. And because there was so much space, the city decided to build it just 3 miles from the city center so people could access it quickly. As the city grew, it simply expanded around the airport, and as a result, Phoenix is one of the few major cities in the US where the airport is located right next to downtown. But why does this matter? Well, it creates a major problem for tall buildings. Because of how close downtown Phoenix is to the flight paths for planes arriving and departing from Sky Harbor, the Federal Aviation Administration, or FAA, has placed strict height limits on what can be built in the area. The FAA's job is to make sure nothing interferes with the airspace. Planes need to safely land and take off. That means anything tall, especially within a certain radius of an airport, gets heavily scrutinized. So every building proposal has to go through a FAA review process, and if it exceeds certain height thresholds, it gets flagged or outright denied. In most of the downtown core, the FAA generally caps new construction at around 500 feet or 152 meters, and in some areas even lower. That's why the tallest building in the entire city, Chase Tower, stands at 483 feet. And it was built way back in 1972, before today's stricter FAA enforcement rules were fully in place. Zoning also plays a part in it. Most of Phoenix is zoned for low-density development and particularly favors single-family homes and car-centric developments. While there isn't enough information on exactly what percentage of the city is zoned exclusively for single-family homes, a look at this map gives you a good view, where all of the bright yellow are made out of single-family residential, and the orange is multifamily residential, showing a clear majority. And unlike land-scarce cities like New York, San Francisco, or Los Angeles, where the median home price per square foot is well above $600, Phoenix is still relatively affordable at just around $284 per square foot. Even in Miami, the price is nearly double that of Phoenix at close to $500 per square foot. The high cost of land in these cities forced developers to build upwards, unlike Phoenix, where the return on investment for a high-rise just isn't always there. Building out horizontally simply makes more economic sense, and most developers simply don't see a reason to build tall. So, how does the future look for skyscraper construction in the city? Well, the city is currently making an effort to revitalize downtown, and one of the main developments in the pipeline is the Astra Tower, a two-tower project that will rise 44 stories and 542 feet tall, which means it will surpass the Chase Tower as the tallest building in the city and become its first real skyscraper. The Astra is planned to break ground at the end of this year and is projected to be completed in about 3 years. But how come it's even allowed to go up? The strictest height caps are east of downtown, which is closer to the airport. But Astra's site on 2nd Avenue between Van Buren and Fillmore Streets is far enough west that the height limit is much higher, therefore allowing the skyscraper to legally go up. The city also wants to renovate the Chase Tower, which has sat vacant ever since 2021. Alongside these two projects, several other high-rise buildings are either under construction, approved, or in the proposal pipeline. However, these are all much shorter. So while the height restrictions most likely aren't going anywhere, Phoenix is still making progress on its vertical construction, one tower at a time. Thank you for watching, and if you liked the video, subscribe to ArchiTales for more.